That's it.
That's it. Welcome, Annie, and thanks so much for being with us. Of late, we've been doing these book clubs where we've been going through graveyards and dark alleys and all these sort of scary things. And we actually got to like it, reluctantly so, but we did. We've started enjoying ourselves and things like that. But nevertheless, this was so lovely, so welcome, and it took us to that cozy, warm place that we all know about, and especially where you have people who are, I mean, they choose books for you. They nudge you to where you wouldn't have otherwise gone. And it's a book club, yours, pretty much like what we have, where everybody is like a different sort, and we get to know each other, and we're friends. We go for concerts together, and we try out new restaurants and things like that. And I'm sure Gertie and her bunch would have done that as well,
Definitely.
Anyway, so thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. I'm so glad you feel that way about it, actually, because I think particularly at the moment, we're in some quite dark times, and I wrote it during the pandemic when we were all in quite dark times too. And I think I was trying to create a world that I knew was there, and I wanted to kind of sort of immerse myself in while I was writing it. So I'm glad you felt that as well. I'm just going to pull my blind down a little bit. The sun has come out. I'm in England. The sun doesn't shine often. It's a shame to shut it out. So that's right in my face. Apologies. That's better. I can look without squinting at you all now.
Okay, so we with this group that's so diverse and so different, we always have somebody or the other giving us an insight which is quite different from what we were expecting, and why this book? Why now?
Well, I started to write this book in 2021, which was when we were all still in the pandemic, and so we had quite strict lockdowns here. I know you guys had lockdowns too. And I was starting to think about what kind of book I'd like to read during that time. And I wanted something uplifting. And I noticed how communities were pulling together during the pandemic, and people were kind of looking out for one another in those kind of small acts of kindness. They were happening all over the place. And I love history. I absolutely love history, and always wanted to write a full historical novel. And so I started to research it, and I sort of noticed these similarities between what was happening in lockdown and what happened in the Second World War, and what happens to human beings when they're faced with adversity, and they just all react in the same way, and they pull together and they support one another through these sort of dark times. And that was the sort of jumping off point for me for this book. And I'd always wanted to write a book set in a bookshop. And I don't know if you're noticing at the moment, but there are lots of books coming out set in bookshops, books about books. It's a real thing. And I think my theory is that during lockdown, we couldn't go to bookshops. So for me, I was trying to write and create this bookshop that was one I couldn't visit at that time. I worked in a bookshop, so that was part of my career. And I've always worked in books, so I just thought it would be a wonderful place to set a book.
And how did you make that transition from bookshop to writing?
It was a long one. So I worked in a bookshop on Charing Cross Road, which was sort of the mecca of book selling. It's where all the main bookshops in London were. Not so much now, but it was. And I started my career there in quite a large bookshop called Books, Etc. And I worked there for a couple of years, kind of immersed in that world. I was a children's bookseller. It was before Harry Potter was famous, so it was a long time ago. And then I got a job in publishing, and I worked for a children's publisher for 13 years. And then I got made redundant from that job, and it was when my children were quite small. And I started to, I'd always written little bits, but I always wanted to write a novel. And I was home with my children, who are wonderful, wonderful beings, but I wanted something that kind of exercised my brain more. And so I did a creative writing course and started to write. And then I wrote my first novel. And then it took a while, but it got published sort of 2 or 3 years later. And then, so this book is my my 7th novel, but it's my first novel published in Spanish. So I'm really pleased. I'm so happy that it's Gertie's flying all around the world at the moment, which is wonderful.
Really, and we love her. I mean, one of the things that we learned from her is to improvise. Like, we have Rose here, who was having problems getting on Zoom, and so I told her, come over, and we do it together from home.
Yes, so, this is exactly. If Gertie had Zoom, that's what they would have done.
She bought the book.
Yes, I read what the English and her.
Okay,
thank you, Rose. One of my characters in my last book was called Rose, so I love the name Rose.
And talking of children, I mean, I had never realized how children got shunted around the place during wars and things like that way. And then talking to the more experienced members in our group, I got to hear of so many other instances. Carmen?
Oh, yes. I thought Kindertransport is what you have there. You have Charles, who was that a private enterprise, or was that something done within the government or within the local authorities? I wondered if it was something, just people who volunteered and people who worked, but were nothing to do with the official, or was
it? Yeah, so it was a mixture, because in 1938 it was a group of sort of Jewish businessmen, but there were also quite a lot of people from the Quaker community and other people who wanted to help, who petitioned the government and asked the Home Secretary, then Foreign Secretary, if they would consider bringing children over from Europe. And yes, that was, they agreed, and there were these various organizations called the Movement for the Care of Jewish Children, and they all kind of came together and sort of made efforts. They went over, incredibly brave, went over. People like Charles, his character is based on an element of truth, of going over and bringing these children back. They some were babies from very, very young to teenage, and it was a big thing. 10,000 children came to the UK, but there's a very famous man called Nicholas Winton, who is very well known. If you're interested in Kindertransport, and I learned a lot about it when I was researching it, he was one of the men that really worked hard to bring children over. It was quite an enterprise. And then, of course, the war began in September 39, and then that was kind of the end of those efforts. But yeah, a lot of children came,
because we had that in our war. Actually, the war was going on, and there was a lot of bombing going on, and here the children were shipped to Russia. It was an official thing, yeah, and many of them never came back.
Yeah,
but some others did, and it was a very, very widespread thing in the north of Spain, especially, where there was a lot of Guernica by Picasso.
Yes, of course.
In that area,
you had a lot of stuff going on. Yes, I know. My Spanish history isn't great, but I'm learning, and there's some real stories to be told about what happened there. Yeah.
So I was wondering if it was more or less the same kind of thing. Yes, because children, in war should be kept in a safe place.
Well,
and
this is
I'm
it.
not so sure that Russia was very safe afterwards. But
I mean, yes, it's when you say right. Yes, yeah, exactly. I'm not sure really. That sounds like a story that needs to be told. I mean, in the UK, from what I know, was my mum and dad were lived during the war, and they would tell me stories. They were evacuated. My dad ended up in northern Yorkshire. My mum ended up on the east coast in Suffolk with her family. Actually, she had family there. I always used to like those stories because they did initially, when war began, a lot of people sent their children away. There was a big evacuation of children to the countryside from cities, particularly London. And then because the war didn't really get going, it didn't start properly until the Blitz in sort of the second half of 1940. A lot of children then came back because people thought it was called the phony war. It was like, why did we send these children away? They're perfectly safe here. And a lot of children came back, and a lot of people kept their children with them in London and sort of lived through the war and, sort of dealt with the bombings. That's why I've kind of got the characters of Elizabeth with her son, and she stays because she feels that that's the right. She wants to keep him with her. And I think a lot of mothers felt like that.
Yeah.
In fact,
I would. I know I would.
Yeah. Me too.
In fact, you have an ex-minister who was an offspring of one of the Spaniards who went there, Michael Portillo.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that was when I started to realize a bit of that part of history, which was quite new to me, and Sonia is a translator, and she normally catches us and tells us which of the translations are good and which one can be heard and not.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Sonia, what do you think?
Yeah, but I read the book in English, so I can't tell.
Oh.
Because we had the book in both languages, so people could choose which one they want.
You are amazing. You're so multilingual. It's amazing. I'm sorry. I apologize. I have very, very little Spanish. It's terrible. I'm trying to learn. I am trying to learn. I can speak German. Can't speak Spanish yet.
Well, German is a difficult language. But I'm not a literary translator. I'm a technical one. So I always tell people that I wouldn't like to translate literature because I want to enjoy it. I don't want to be picky and start finding things, and I just want to read and enjoy. And this was an enjoyable book.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
And
I love your backdrop, by the way.
Oh,
Sonia,
thank you.
I love your backdrop with your dress.
Very British.
Mm.
So how I wanted to ask, how autobiographical was it? I mean,
Sonia,
I think your microphone went off at the key moment. You asked me how autobiographical it was.
Okay, that's it.
Now it's back on. So I read your bio, and you just said before that you worked in a bookshop. So how autobiographical was it? Sorry.
It's all right. That's impossible to say. I have to take a big run up at that word. Well, there's elements of Gertie in me. In fact, I mean, yes, the bookshop and the book selling were from the days that I remember when we'd have all sorts of interesting characters coming into the shop, and that sense of being in a bookshop. And I wanted that feeling, when you go into a bookshop and it's just you and the books, and it's just this wonderful kind of sensation of you pick up a book and the covers are beautiful. And I mean, if you're like me, if you're in a secondhand bookshop, you do have a little sniff of the book because they smell so wonderful. And I wanted to really reflect that. That's how I feel when I go into a bookshop, and so that sort of part of it. But Gertie partly reflected me in that when during the pandemic I was really struggling to read fiction, and I couldn't seem to get immersed in stories. I felt so distracted. I read a lot of non-fiction because it was like I needed facts. And I think I've talked to a few people about this, and a lot of people felt the same, how our reading habits changed. And so Gertie's story is that she's fallen out of love with books and book selling because her husband Harry died, and she doesn't want to be in this world anymore without him, and she's thinking about retiring and moving away. And then so when Hedy Fisher comes into her life, she re-engages with that through their shared love of stories and books. And I sort of did the same with Gertie. I kind of went on this journey with her. I listened to the audio edition of Jane Eyre again, and I hadn't read that since I was at school. And I just fell in love with that again. I thought, oh, there's a reason why people read and reread this book. It's so good. It's so ahead of its time. She's such a great heroine. So there was an element of that autobiography for me, where I was going on this journey with Gertie and reconnecting with books and reading, and like as she does, really. So yeah.
And it's there is an incredible reading list that you can extract from the book.
I know. You're welcome. I've given you your reading list for the next, couple of years.
Yeah.
Work your way through them.
And they're all fantastic. I've read a few, not all of them, obviously, but I've read a few, and it's just classics. And
yeah, it is. And I'm going back to classics now, because I think also, obviously, for this book, I had to choose stories that were written before 1945. And it's just lovely to sort of immerse yourself in those worlds again. Particularly, you will obviously love historical fiction, and it's something very magical about reading a story that is so-called historical fiction, but it was written in that time. I think that's quite wonderful. So yeah,
I mean, talking about moving to that era, I think the language reflects it a lot. And that's like a very sensitive topic, because how much of language of that era can one use, And I love the tickety-boos and things like that way, I just love them.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm so glad you said that. My American publisher said, what does tickety-boo mean? Will anybody understand that? I said, it doesn't matter. It's just a lovely phrase.
Said,
Onomatopoeic, tickety-boo.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you just have that right mix of language that we're used to, and then those little things that you throw in, and that was another thing that I totally enjoyed about it. The other one was save my breath to cool my porridge.
Oh,
I haven't had porridge in a long time.
Yes, absolutely. My mum used to say that to me. So I, growing up with my parents were older, so my mum was 40 when she had me. So I grew up with a generation that were older, who'd lived through the war. So I sort of feel like these people, I know them. I like spending time with them. I feel very at home with them. Yeah.
And then we have Carolina, who is in finance. Okay, she's practical and she's pragmatic until she reads a book. And then she totally surprises you. Carolina, you have something to say?
Yeah, hi, good morning, and congratulations for the book. It was really entertaining, and
thank you.
Yeah, it was really lovely. Well, we were talking a little bit about food, and you mentioned in the book, well, some of the characters were saving their rations to celebrate different occasions. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that, about, what kind of food did they get with these rations, and how long did this rationing system last after the war, if you research into these kind of things?
Yeah, I did quite a lot of research. There were actually very strict rations of certain amounts of food. You could have certain amounts of meat and cheese. Pregnant women or breastfeeding women were allowed more. Children were allowed, children under a certain age were allowed more, but certain things were definitely rationed. One of the things that I always comes to the fore when you research it is the children talking about how sweets were rationed and how going to the sweet shop became a real treat. So there was always a sweet shop on the high street where you would go, and so those were rationed. People became very, very resourceful, so people started growing their own. There were big campaigns from the government, from the Ministry of Information, to grow your own, dig for victory, all these kinds of things that you've probably heard. But I do remember stories of if and I put this in the book actually, if you got an egg, you know, an egg was a really treasured thing. And you know, because everything was very, very strictly rationed, and it was difficult, but people found ways to adapt, and they adapted their recipes. Actually, have I got it? I might have it here. Yeah, this is a book that I use quite a lot. It's a book of wartime rationing and all kind of the recipes that they had. So they would have, and I used some of these recipes in the books, very, very useful ways of using cheese, if you could get cheese, and, you know, just all sorts of things about, you know, like there's a whole thing on potatoes, because potatoes you could, you know, were relatively cheap. People could grow them. Lots of parks became gardens as well. So people found a way around it. I mean, I think they found the drudgery of the blackouts, which started at the beginning of the war. And, you know, that was quite a difficult thing, that and the rationing were the two things that people moaned about the most. But people did lots of preserving. There's a whole thing on how to preserve tomatoes. So Gertie is, you know, she grows her own fruit and vegetables. Lots of people grew, you know, apples and plums and all sorts of things. But they became quite good at and adept at kind of, I've got a whole thing on cakes and biscuits and scones and how they made those as well.
And how you use carrot instead of sugar.
Carrot instead of sugar. What were the other ones that they used? There were just all sorts of, instead of turkey, they had murky at Christmas, which was mutton turkey, and tinned pears, you know, no Christmas puddings or any of that. But people adapted, people found their way, and they kept chickens, or they, you know, had a few animals, or just made things go. They had spam as well, which I don't know if you've come across. It's disgusting. It comes in a tin. It's like reconstituted meat. That was when the Americans entered the war. There were a lot more canned goods appeared, but there is still that thing that people talk about. They didn't see a banana until after the war. A lot of people said the first time I saw a banana was in 1946, you know, because it just wasn't available. So it's a very interesting kind of side to the war.
Yeah. And they still had to continue with this system of a few years after the war as well.
Yeah, I think there was different kinds of rationing for it, because lots of things like paper was rationed as well, and petrol and those sorts of things. So people you couldn't have a car really after, I can't remember what exact dates, maybe around 1943. So for private use, you didn't have a car, so people used public transport. Paper was rationed, which was an issue for books, but still book sales went up. And I think rationing continued, beyond the end of the war. I think it did. I've got 1948 in my mind for when everything finally stopped, because after the war, you still had issues with, you know, resources and who was farming the land, and, you know, all kind of changed again. So it was finding its level. And then the 50s were quite a difficult time as well. So it was, you know, it's quite an interesting part of history, that.
Then we have Carmen Gonzalez, who is, I think, our youngest, and she has a bone to pick with you.
Oh, okay. Right, Carmen. Okay, I'm ready. Right, let me just have a mouthful of coffee for deal with it.
Okay.
What have I done?
I want to ask you why you died Harry in the first pages, because
why you killed Harry,
yeah, because when I read the book, I imagine he was a perfect man with Grady, and I don't understand why you decide to Harry died.
Well, I'm very sorry, Carmen. This happens from time to time. You get told off for killing somebody off. Well, I suppose the thing is, Gertie has to have a story, doesn't she? And for me, writing a story, I start with my characters, and I have to think about how they're going to be, and how they're going to go on their journeys, and how that will be constructed. And unfortunately, I sort of needed Gertie to be in a certain place at the start of the novel so that she could go on this journey through the story. And yeah, so that actually meant that Harry couldn't be in it either. I mean, he makes appearances, and you know, she does have Charles, who is his best friend, who does support her. But I know what you mean. I'm very fond of Harry as well. I didn't enjoy that. Let me just tell you that I didn't enjoy that. But yeah, I think once she gets Hetty in her life, they both have those similar stories. You know, they're more similar than you kind of they might think to start with. They're kind of an unlikely friendship, and bringing this teenage girl into her life throws her world upside down. But what they then gain from one another is hopefully something that, you know, I think transforms their lives. So yeah, but so I'm sorry about Harry.
Then we have Amma. Amma works with troubled people, you know, and Amma.
Yes.
Okay, so she works with troubled people, and we were wondering where she has a few questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. For my work that I work with mental health people problems, the impact of the war before, the fear during and after the war damage a lot the people, and how the I like it because it's therapeutic. How the community and the solidarity and the book club keeps the mind healthy during the troubles.
Yes.
Not only in the wars, also in the difficult times of the people, and remind me a little bit how we could live, but it's not the same. The pandemic, how this atmosphere of the good things of the people, like a community, the importance of the community, help each other in the difficult times, keep the people strong.
Yeah, and like being therapy, you know, because in
like a therapy.
A psychologist, you
and the group therapy of, I suppose, after I think after especially in Britain and United States, programs of health therapy for the people in the world, not only the soldiers, but also the families, because they stop her life in a tragedy. And I think resume very well this atmosphere of community. The chapter 21 of Charles Dickens' difficult times. I have the book in Spanish. I'm gonna translate. I don't know if Dickens said
Hard times. Yeah, it's called Hard Times. Yes, I know.
Give done what you believe wisely and amability, and in these times, and the worst times of the people, not only worst. Do your best. Do your best.
Yeah. So, I mean, people find a sort of strength at hard times. You know, what's that saying? When the going gets tough, the tough get going, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I do believe that, because I think, you know, there's lots of narratives and you know, if you just watch the news, I don't know what the news is like in Spain, but over here it's very bleak. You know, we'd think that everybody was awful, all human beings are awful, being horrible to everybody all the time. It's just, for me, in my life, I don't believe that that's true. I believe there's more good in people than bad. I believe that when people need help, people try their hardest. Of course, that's not exclusively so, but when times are dark, like I saw it in my community, I saw it just on my street. We were checking in with the older people. We were, if somebody had COVID, we would go and do their shopping for them. You know, just, it's not big actions. So wars and these things, these big actions, the countries and governments that, you know, go out to war and make these decisions at these high levels. I'm really interested in the stories of the communities and the human beings who actually pull together and help one another and support one another. And your points about mental health are really excellent ones, because obviously at this time, in the First World War, in the Second World War, there wasn't that support in terms of, you know, what the authorities did for soldiers when they came home. People went back to their communities, their families, and just had to get on with it. But there is that sense, you know, for Charles, he goes through, he lives through the First World War and he sees these terrible things. It makes him turn away from everything and loses, you know, the people he loves and all those things. But he gets the strength from Gertie and she from him. And, you know, it's those relationships that do exist that I think are the things that carry people forward. So I'm a big believer in human spirit and what we as humans, you know, that there's more good than bad in the world, definitely.
Patricia is a teacher, and she's one of those teachers who keep flying all over the world.
Oh, wow.
I wish I could travel more.
That does help, you know.
To work.
Yeah, because she does in Europe. Okay, good enough.
Okay, so
and that does bring something to your class, you know, that multicultural aspect.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to congratulate you on the book, because I think it was a really nice book. I really like reading books about Second World War and how people felt or how they lived. And what I wanted to comment a little bit on was on the reflection that Gertie makes about the war, not dividing. And I think this is what you just said, okay? We cannot divide the world into good or bad, or heroes or villains. And I think that there is one quotation that I really like to highlight a little bit when you're talking about Hetty's father, right? It is on page 69, when it says, an ordinary man, a husband, a father. History liked to cast people as heroes or villains, but Gertie knew from experience that life was less definite. It tossed humans from event to event like pebbles in the sea. And all you could do was deal with the world which surrounded you, to fight or flee, to protect the ones you loved and try to survive. Okay, and I think that, I mean, it's important now in our world. It seems like we want to divide people into good or bad, or black or white, and there are more shades, right? So we cannot think that everyone is bad because he was born in that place or whatever. And this is what I liked of the book, okay? The fact that that everyone is equal. It depends on what happened to you, and then we are at the mercy of life.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm glad you like that, because that is something I do believe. And I think, you know, we are kind of, the world is cast a little bit, you know, particularly at the moment as well. And because of the world we live in and the way that news comes to us, and it's very like 24 hours, snappy kind of notifications on my phone, this has happened, and we read it in these very quick bursts. I think it's very easy to see things as either one thing or the other, but the world is not black and white. The world has so many shades of grey within it. Or you know, different kind of elements to it. It's more nuanced, it's more complex. And I think it's important to see behind that, you know, and to see, because obviously Hedi's father fought in the First World War for the Germans. So, you know, he would be dismissed as a villain, but I wanted to reflect the fact that it's not as straightforward as that. You know, there's lots of kind of strands to it. So I'm really glad you picked that out, because I think it's really important to remember that. I think that's part of understanding history. You know, that's why I think history is so important, because if you understand what's come before, you understand why we are where we are, where we're standing, where we are now, it informs how you go forwards. And it's so important to have that knowledge as well.
Chris, we have Chris, who's also a translator and rather critical of the books that I choose. So I'm
oh dear.
Dry.
Oh wow. You know, everyone's a critic.
I haven't chosen this one. Chris.
Oh no. You're good. You're good.
Chris, you have some.
Okay. Chris is fine. It's suddenly frozen.
Can you start again? We lost you for a while. Chris. Chris. Okay, we bring him. Chris.
Hello.
No. No. Okay. Rosa.
Yeah.
Rosa, you have something to say?
Yes, of course. First of all,
Rosa is part of my control group. You know?
Oh, okay, excellent. You've got to have a control group. I love
through
it.
somebody, Rosa and Carmen.
First of all, thank you very much for being with us today, and congratulations again. Well, I love Gertie. I think I'm so close to her in feelings, because I'm 60-odd too, and like she treats Hedi at the very beginning, and how she changed along the time. She let herself to be free, her sentiments, her feelings, and she laughs again. She is, I think she doesn't want to laugh again so much. So I'm very, very glad to have met Gertie. And in another thing, most frivolous, I must say that there are many powers in this book. Of course, as you said before, the power of the community, the sense of community, the power of the books, the power of the back club, and the power of the classical books that they are reading. And of course, the power of tea. Sometimes I have tea with you, with Gertie and Hedi and Mrs. Snip and everyone, because everything goes better with a tea. So you insist very much. Sometimes I have coffee, I must admit, okay? But the tea led the people to sit down, breathe, and think and relax, no? And Gertie is always saying, oh, please, have a tea. Sit down and have a tea. Yeah. That's very, very, very nice of her. And I know you are used to having tea and to sit down, but it's a powerful herramienta, tool. No?
Tool. Yeah,
a powerful tool. So I like very much Gertie, I like Hedi. I love most of the characters, yes. And I think you must be proud of such a novel, in spite of the historical backgrounds that are terrible, no? But well, you have managed to read a novel with that backgrounds, that terrible backgrounds, but the characters are hopeful, and the novel is hopeful in the end, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really glad you feel that, because that's what I wanted it to be. It's, you know, there are dark times. We all go through dark times, right? But I always think there's always there's always a little bit of light, you know, and what's that, the Leonard Cohen phrase that I really love, there are cracks in everything, that's how the light gets in. I just always think, you know, even when the world is pitch black, there will be something that you can, and we reach for that as humans, we reach for that hope, and that's the thing that I wanted to kind of make a big part of the story, hope for the future as well. But I love it that you love the tea, and I'm going to confide in you as well that I actually, Rosa, I don't drink tea either. I make really good tea because my mum taught me how to make proper tea, but I don't actually drink tea. I'm more coffee and herbal teas and all those kinds of things. But tea is so symbolic, and it really was during the war when they, going back to that question about rationing, they thought they were going to ration tea, and when tea was rationed, everybody panicked. But, you know, there were characters like Marjorie, who is from the Women's Voluntary Service, who keeps the tea urn going, the old general in the corner. And, you know, it was something that sustained people. And it sounds funny, but it was a really symbolic thing. It sort of...
Yes.
It kept people... I know it sounds bizarre. How does a drink keep you going? But of course, it's just at the end of a shift or something, just somebody being kind. It's acts of kindness, isn't it? It's kindness in a cup of tea. Someone makes you a tea, so there's love in that as well. So yeah, it is a big thing, and it is true. And that's why I made Hedy say, I don't want a tea, why are you always trying to give me tea?
Yes.
Because she's German, so you know, it would be more cafe and kuchen. So
not more tea, please.
Yeah, exactly, that's enough now, no kippers.
Yeah, I think.
Annie, at our book clubs, we have a small old general, and we have tea.
Do you meet in real? Do you meet in person as a book club? How often do you meet? I love book clubs. Sorry, because you're actually, you know, you're all now official members of the Aero book club as well.
Yeah, once a month. Actually, here we have an amalgamation of my book clubs, because we have about. But this is a group that meets together very often, and we meet at least once a month. And so it's tea and biscuits, and if it's someone's birthday, like we're going to have a birthday, Sonia and myself, for the next book club, so we will bring in some cake and stuff like that way.
Lovely.
And
it's perfect.
It's good fun.
Yeah.
And
well, you're official members of the Aero book club now, so you know.
That's an honor.
Okay.
Then we have Ruth. Ruth, when I first got to know her, was, I mean, she a very patient, gentle person who can get extremely impatient when she gets stuck in a book, or she gets stuck in an English exercise or something like that way, you know. I mean, all her patience flies out of the window. So Ruth, you have something to say. Ruth is a pharmacist.
Okay.
I at the beginning I had one question, but now I think in another question, because I love the community around the bookshop, and because it remember me. I work in a pharmacy, and every day came the same people. And it's the same like in the bookshop of the Hedy, and I love it remember me because people say you they think in that moment, no, like when one client don't like one book and they say he says there, and it's so good for me. It's like my office every day, you know. And I like that part of the book. And another question is that this is not a question, it's an appreciation. Sorry. And another question is because the book it's it's not the same, but it's remember me the film, the movie. Well, in English, I don't know the name. Like here is La vida es bella of. ¿Cuál es la?
How's that translated?
Life is beautiful.
Life is beautiful.
Life is
Life is beautiful. Oh, the film with Roberto Benigni.
Yes,
is it?
Exactly.
The Italian film, yeah.
Yes. Here they have the books to evadirse of the war, no? And there they have the father tries to with plays and the boy don't
with some make believe.
I know that film really well. I love that film. I know the one you mean. It's when they end up in the concentration camp and he pretends it's a game to make it. That's the story, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
I love that film. It's such a and you know, films like that actually that I've watched over the years have probably all stored in my brain because I just love the set. That's what I mean about the fact that the world is dark. You know, that is such an awful, horrible situation, and yet he manages in that story to bring this kind of strand of hope to it. You know, and I love that story, and I love that you work in a pharmacist and and I bet you have different characters, different customers coming in every day, and they're all. But then you have the same people coming in who you chat to, and you know their stories of bed, and you know, and that's what I wanted to reflect, those communities where it's a really important thing, right, for people of all ages coming into a shop where they know the person and they can talk to them, and that person knows them. And there's the lady who has all her Georgette Heyer books that she has a list and they keep it for her and they know her. So I just, you know, and I know those, for what you're saying is how those communities work. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that aspect of it too.
Yeah. Chris, do you want to have another go?
Yes. Yes. See if my. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello? I can hear you. Yes, can't see you, but I can hear you, so it's all good.
Great. So it is a delight. The book.
Okay. Flor is our artist. Okay. Flor does. I mean, it's quite amazing because as we're doing a book club, Flor draws, and each book club, it's like what stimulates her, we get a drawing out of her. Flor.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I'm like overwhelmed now. Sorry, Annie. I don't know if I'm going to be up to
either when we do anyone who draws, I'm in awe of you.
Well, let's say I'm not an artist. I'm just, as Michelle says, it's like whatever we're talking about, I feel like I prefer to listen than to express myself. So then whatever my colleagues are saying, and I'm just trying to draw something. I might say I won't have it finished by the end of it because I'm quite a perfectionist and I like to change things along the way. I already have 3 sketches if this says anything.
Oh wow, I'd love to see them.
Yeah, you'll see them, don't worry. First of all, like everyone else, thank you for this wonderful novel. As Michelle said, yes, we had a row of thrillings that everyone was killed by different measures, but now in your book I really felt the community, and I really liked the colorful characters that you made, and I might say I enjoyed each of them. I might have a list, a long one, with them like I don't want to lose track what was they doing. But I really liked Marjorie because she brought a kind of energy that Gertie, let's say, she might need it, because she needed to be dragged down, but she needs someone to be stronger than her and to tell her what to do. So I was really hoping they're going to be friends in the end. So I don't really have questions about the book, but I just wanted to say that I found myself dragged in this kind of community because, as Michelle might remember, I started going to the book club and maybe not finishing the books at the beginning. But now, like, reading the book, being there and everything is kind of priority for the friends that I've made there. So thank you for writing this book.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely. Let me just show you a quick picture, because I'm glad you like Marjorie, because actually I think she's one of my favorite. This is a picture. I don't know if you can see, but it's my inspiration for the Women's Voluntary Service. These are members of the Women's Voluntary Service from the Second World War. I found this picture and I had to print it out, because then they're looking at me and they were willing me to write this story. And actually, the more I look at it, the more I can see a Marjorie and a Gertie and a Hedy in amongst them. So they are my absolute icons, and they keep me inspired for my for writing novels.
Definitely, volunteering, it's a thing that brings people together, but at the same time teaches us things that you thought you might know, but obviously it's like different views, and there is always something to learn.
Absolutely. And Gertie sees Marjorie as a bit of a challenge because she's so bossy
exactly.
to start with, but she's just got this absolute heart of gold, Marjorie, and she's just very she's one of those traditional stiff upper lip British kind of women who does things in a certain way, but I really liked the way their friendship developed. I was really pleased with how they kind of came together.
Yes, I was really surprised that she asked Gertie to be her chaperone for the first date with.
Oh, that was
with
so
Gerald.
Yes,
it was a romance with Gerald. Yeah, no, there were a lot of Marjories during the Second World War. There were a lot of them on the home front. So yeah, I just really love the stories of all the women who were, who got this opportunity really through the Second World War to do things that they hadn't done before, because the men were all away fighting and they were needed to, drive trucks, sort of do manned radars, all sorts of things. The only thing they were never allowed to do was fire a gun. So yeah, it was a real kind of time for women in terms of how their role evolved, and I find that very interesting. So yeah, Marjorie, I love Marjorie.
Adolfo is a bit worried about stuff. He's a school teacher.
Okay. Tell me your worries, Adolfo. This is like a therapy session. What is your worry? What are your worries?
I think it's a pleasure to talk to you right now here. And as many people said, the powers of books. And one of my favorite characters is the little boy who the children reading club, and how the books can solve that children don't go to school in the Second World War, in this war. Yeah, I know. It's not for me that little children is just reading the Winnie Pooh books and comics. Is one of my favorite characters, and how he's brave just after reading. He had no problem when someone read the book. Yeah, and this is one of my favorite characters, and I want to know. I want to know how do you deal with how do you get this character to, how do you try to invent this character, because I really like this kind of book, this kind of character, the brave
the character of Billy. Is that character? Yeah. I really like writing characters who are children, because I think they bring a certain honesty to stories, because they will always say things that adults are kind of too afraid to say. And he's very, he's very direct. But not rude, but because his mother keeps him in check. But he always tells the truth. And he has this really nice relationship with Gertie, because he calls her Gertie Bingham all the time. And with Hedy as well. And he lives with his mum on his own, so his character is quite you know, he feels quite, I think, quite lonely sometimes. So the books help him. But then when he's given that responsibility of running the children's book club with, you know, with Hedy, I think that is sort of something that he just really enjoys, and that develops his character. But he was a fun character to write. I mean, I've got children and they're a bit older now, but I've always loved writing characters who are children, because they do just bring that certain kind of honesty and truth to stories. But it was really fun to include the children's books as well, because everybody loves Winnie the Pooh, right? You know, and a bit of Treasure Island and those kinds of stories. So yeah, he was fun to write.
Is there a reason why Billy calls everybody by their full name? He adds the surname on every time.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to be very correct. I don't know, it sort of started and I thought I can't stop him doing that. Now that's part of his the way he speaks.
He developed.
That's what he does. Yeah. Yeah, he's a sweet little character. He has a little bit of he does love Hedy, and then he's a bit indignant when she gets married.
I know.
With Sam. But Sam wins, you know, he wins him over. So
Sam is lovely. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, he is. And so, I mean, you know, that's for Hedy, you know, she's got the worry about her family, her parents, her brother. And then, of course, Sam, who becomes her fiance as well. You know, it's sort of, there's a lot that Hedy has to deal with.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are a lot of characters, aren't there, to keep track of. I've realised I give you quite a lot of characters to keep an eye on.
Yeah,
sorry, Michelle.
Yeah.
Can I ask something to Annie?
Yeah, sure.
He's talking about the children, the child, no, the bill. At the end of the book, we have a list, no, about recommendations, no, books, about that you use in the story.
Books that were used in the book club, yeah.
Exactly. And there is the Gertie and Arno Adventures by Heidi Fisher and Elizabeth Chambers, 2 characters of the book. They are real. They are Heidi and Elizabeth really exist. I mean, the book is real or is a fiction?
It's fictionalized, that book. It has not yet been written. Maybe I should write it. I don't know. I've never written a children's book. I think that would be quite a challenge. But no, that's Hedy's story that she writes, and that's written with and illustrated by Elizabeth. So I wanted to give them a story as well. I had to write little bits about that story.
Okay.
But yes, no, that doesn't exist yet. Let's say yet.
You could write it.
Maybe use something real, not to put
yes. And maybe your illustrator, maybe the lady who does illustrations could help me with illustrations.
Yamini?
Sorry, Michelle, did you say something? Yes. No.
My turn now. I'd like to talk about how during times of war and pandemics, life just comes to a standstill, and you have these women who always show resilience, the unity and the strength that comes from women, because the care often falls on them, and especially during times of, war, pandemics, and when life stops, and how these women are very pragmatical and they get stuff done, because women we get stuff done.
We just do.
Yeah, we do. We're very practical, and how they do that without losing hope, by keeping hope in everybody who's going through this war, and through literature, and how you use a lot of female authors as well.
Yes, because I feel like those stories haven't always been told, and now I know in a lot of fiction they are being retold and reframed with women, pushing those stories forwards. And I think there's so many more of those to tell. And I'm a passionate advocate of telling women's stories from that point of view, because there are lots of amazing stories. There are lots of amazing stories of women who were involved in, cracking the Enigma code and working as spies and those kinds of, and they are fantastic stories, and I love all those stories as well. But there's all these stories of these women who were just doing what they had to do, but doing it well, but then also lifting one another up. And I really feel like it's a powerful thing, you know. I'm sort of evangelical about that, how we as women have this, we can lift each other up so easily, and that was what I wanted to reflect in this story as well. Because you're right. I mean, it's not, I'm not dismissing the guys, I'm not dismissing the men. They're, you know, we've got Gerald, we've got lots, we've got Billy, we've got these great, Charles, these great men as well. But I just want to shine a light on these lesser told stories about the women who just keep going and support their community and do their thing, but hold each other up. And, you know, really, I do believe kept Britain going, because, you know, historically, Hitler thought Britain would capitulate. He thought we would just blitz them, literally blitzkrieg, and they will capitulate. And Britain didn't. And that's not me, you know, there's a whole chat about blitz spirit and all this kind of thing. It was brutal, it was horrific, it was horrible, but there was this sense of, we have to keep going, we have to keep driving on. And there was and people, you know, people laugh about it, but it was people like Marjorie running these canteens, and women like Gertie in their communities with book clubs, and just looking after one another, just human kind of, the human spirit and human kindness. So I'm glad you picked up on that, because I that's really my sort of strongest theme in the whole thing. I want people to be able to see that side of it too.
Yamini is a poet and a pianist, and this is pretty much the subject of a lot that she writes about.
Oh wow, amazing! Oh well, I'd love to read some of your stuff. Can I find you online?
You can. I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
With you, and I will be published in a year and a half. This is big.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, how exciting. Love it. Brilliant. Yes, I will find you.
I am going to help Chris out. Chris says, I also find the Britishness of the book delightful, and the stoicism. And she says, like, as Mrs. Crowe says, oh, well, it's the world we live in now. And Chris says that it helped her because she's having challenges now, and she feels she's far too dramatic about it, you know, and the book sort of anchored her down a bit.
Oh well, Chris, I'm sorry you're having troubles, but I'm glad the book's helping you, and I'm really pleased, because I think it is, you know, I love it that you said you're getting a bit dramatic, but you know, I think we all have a tendency to do that when things flare up. We can all get a bit, oh, I think the world we live in is a little bit like that now. But I think if we could get, you know, just a little dash of Marjorie and Gertie's stoicism and resilience, that came from my mum. My mum was just the most stoic, resilient woman ever. And she just had so many things to deal with in her life, and she dealt with them and just kept going, you know. And I think there's a lot to be said for a little dash of that every now and then, but we've got to look after ourselves as well. It's got to be a bit of a balance between the two, I think. So you can't just be resilient and just, you know, become a martyr to it. You've got to look after yourself, but also you've got to keep going. I think keep going is the key. Yeah.
Pilar, do you have something to say?
Yeah. Hello, Annie.
Hi.
I'd like to congratulate you on your book. I think you create a real atmosphere. I think you have make it real. I can imagine all these characters. I think I met them in England, and all these British details. And the most interesting thing is that through the dialogues, you have made the story progress, which for me must be very difficult. And on the other hand, I think it's very risky to talk about the Second World War when there's so much literature, films, and it's very risky to talk about this nowadays. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, there are a lot of really great Second World War books out there at the moment. I mean, there's a lot to choose from. Yeah. So I'm very grateful that you chose the Air Raid Book Club. But yeah, it's an interesting theme. I think we're just always endlessly fascinated with the world wars, Second World War, First World War, because we're just such huge parts of history, and so much happened in quite a short period of time. And they've had, they still have an effect today. So we're always trying to understand them. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And also, can I just say, I love your picture behind you. That's beautiful.
Who's left? Pilar Garcia, something to say? No? Yeah, Pilar?
Yeah. Hello, I also want to congratulate you for your books. I really enjoyed it. And I must say, it made me cry, which I still don't cry in books.
Oh,
but I did. Little Billy was so nice. When he gives the money to Gertie to reopen the shop, and that I found it very, very, very nice. But somehow you have answered my question, the question I had before. I was wondering about, not the bookshop, but the book club. Did you in your research find any evidence of that anywhere, or did you just imagine it? Which
there were book clubs, definitely, because what happened at the start of the Second World War, from day one, there was blackout. So we had people had long periods of time when they had to basically exist in the dark by lamplight. You weren't allowed to allow even a chink of light out into the street. You get told off by the ARP wardens. So that was very strict, and the evenings were long. So and people needed something to do. And then, of course, the air raid started as well. So people were in the shelters for long periods of time. So actually, it was quite a long time, and it was quite boring. I mean, people listened to the radio, and they would do various things. But there was a huge demand for books. And there were various different book clubs that sprung up. The Book Society started a book club that was actually run by quite well-known authors. They were the ones who pulled together list of books, and there'll be a monthly book that was released. Foyles, which is a very famous bookshop in London, they had a book club as well. And we had publishers also ran book clubs. So Penguin had a book club, Collins had a book club, a crime book club. So there were these book clubs that emerged, individual little book clubs in bookshops. I don't know that I found one specifically, but then I imagined it. I imagined how that would be, because I thought, well, Uncle Thomas, Gertie's Uncle Thomas, he has a book club, Arnold's book club, and then Gertie runs one as well. So I thought that was very possible that there would be one. And bookshops existed and did orders for people who wanted books to read. So I thought, I could just use that story and create a lovely book club for Gertie as well. So yeah, it sort of came from that. But yeah, they did exist. The sales of books increased during the Second World War, even though there was paper rationing. The books that were very popular, books like War and Peace, became a bookseller. So a bestseller rather. So I included that. And a lot of the books that I picked, like Gone with the Wind, they were all bestsellers of the time. John Steinbeck. And then people went back to the classics. People went back to Dickens, to Jane Austen, to the Brontes. So, all that stuff is has an element of truth in it as well. So yeah, it was a fun bit to research that. Really fun.
And then we have Amparo, who's one of those really brave grandmas. She manages the whole tribe of grandchildren. Amparo, do you have something to say? We admire her. We totally admire her.
I mean, she sounds wonderful.
She is. Amparo? No.
No.
Yeah,
now, yes?
Yeah.
Yes, now? Okay, I enjoy this book because I love libraries. I love stay in a place where a lot of books, and I think it's very, very beautiful to do this kind of meetings with other people who love also read and comment the books. And this is very interesting because it's something that I suppose save a lot of people in the war to to maintain the mind in other things that not war and deaths and something like this. I think is if it's true that there are in the world this kind of book club, I suppose helps a lot of people in this world.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Pilar Gonzalez. Pilar.
Gonzalez.
Pilar. Carmen's mom. Yeah, Pilar. I just have to introduce you to her, even if she doesn't want to say anything. She's a librarian, and she never throws us out when we go over time. She is so lovely and so welcoming. I mean, an applause for Pilar.
Librarians are the best.
They are.
Libraries, booksellers, we love them all. On my local library, they are just, I love them. They are so wonderful.
Yeah.
They are the one, they are the ones who run the community and keep the communities with the books going.
Yeah.
So yeah, wonderful.
Martha, do you have something to say? Martha? No? Manolo?
Yeah, I have had difficulties for in the beginning, but well, I stay here. I see. I enjoy the book very, very much, but I see some levels. One, the affair society and under war, everybody is very nice, no? And I think all people fight to survive in all situations under war, and in because if not, the humanity kind is were despair, no? Always we have wars, and all wars are the same. But there are a thing which I like is not relevant in the book, because it's the other, the concept, the idea of the other, because all people have identify country and people, and when arrive a new land, give a name of the of newcomers, and who come after or is there, like Australian, for example, or America Aborigine, is not the same right, no? And in case of the Jews in Europe, all life for 2,000 years, and there are not they are guilty for everything and are the others. Well, I think we made, for example, England is land of England, Ireland, Deutschland, and Afghanistan, you know. But in Spain we said país, paisaje, paisanaje, and the country and people are the same, and the others and guilty and with all the same rights, no? And well, it's a thing which I thought, because there are names which despite these people who did, for example, Andalusia, few people knew.
Manolo, can you come to the point, because we need to wind up in a little while. Manolo.
What?
No, can you resume? Can you come to the point? Can you summarize?
My point is which identify the people in the country is against other people in very place of the world, no?
Yeah.
And there are names which lost the meaning, like Andalusia is from Vándalos. Vándalos there are not.
So the origin of that, okay. Now I need to do something really small and very quick. I need to do a poll. Okay. Now, how many of you guessed who Charles?
Charles.
Yes. Who Charles was in love with? How many of you guessed?
I did.
You did. No, truthfully.
No, I thought he was in love with Gertie, not with him.
No. With Gertie. Okay, how many for Gertie?
Gertie.
I thought Jack at the end.
No. I'm asking Gertie. I just need to see hands up for Gertie.
I thought he was in love with Gertie.
Gertie.
Only Gertie. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 for Gertie and all the rest for Jack. Okay.
Well, because of the letter he was about to send from the front.
I picked up on when the father got angry. When Jack and his father had a talk and the father got angry. That was the bit I picked up on.
Yes, that early.
Yeah. So
I had a lot of discussions with my agent about that, about saying, did you get it? Because you never know when you're writing it, you think, well, how will they interpret? I wanted it to be something that was a surprise for some. Yeah. She said she did, but I knew that other people didn't. So I think, there are clues along the way. If you're paying attention, would have seen there was like a story of the father wasn't happy and there was an element of something. But so it's interesting.
Raquel, you have 2 minutes. You have something to say? No? Okay. Can we take a photograph with everybody's books up?
Shall I get mine as well?
Yeah.
Mine is in my iPad, and I'm using my iPad.
Yes.
So
I'm inside here. I'm sorry.
Me too.
Can someone take a photograph?
I use mine as well.
I'm doing screenshots of that.
Oh, I love it. I love all the different formats. The different editions. That's the American one you've got there. You've got the UK one, then the Spanish one.
Can somebody hear what's playing? That's Vera Lynn.
Oh. Yo tengo aquí, pero en el iPad.
Me too, in my iPad.
Vamos a ver.
And I love that you mentioned Vera Lynn.
Yes.
The Forces sweetheart.
She really was. And she was just, she only died a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
last year maybe.
In 2020.
Yeah, and she kept, she recorded, she kept singing, through her whole life. She was she was amazing. Another amazing woman. There you go.
Yeah.
Kept everybody going.
Here it's
that's the American one.
Did people get photographs of all the books up? Because I did.
Yeah, I did screenshots of
yes, but in my iPad.
Okay, super.
I'm not there.
So, Santiago, you have something to say?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm Santiago. I am the voice in the dark, okay? Well, we're going Torrent Històrica. I am the director of the festival. This festival ends today with this event, okay? And we have since Thursday a lot of events in person with authors, with a lot of public, but we wanted to make this a special thing, and it's very nice because it's a book club talking about a book club, okay? And with a long distance between us, which is shortened because of the technology, but because of the book also. So I must thank you so much for being here with us and make this a special event. And we want to share this congratulations with Planeta Publishing, which published a book in Spain. And so Torrent Històrica ends till next year. Maybe Annie must be with us some year, maybe in Spain. Why not?
Yes, I'd love to be with you in person.
Okay.
We'd love to come to Valencia, definitely.
We'll see.
And to end with "We'll Meet Again" by Vera Lynn. Yeah. What she says is, "We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day." We always have sun in Valencia.
Yes, you do, definitely.
Yeah. So we'll meet again on a sunny day in Valencia. I'd also like to say thank you to the Ayuntamiento de Torrent, Torrent Històrica, the libraries, Planeta, and my group, without which this would not have been possible. Thank you so much, Annie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been lovely. Thank you. So lovely to meet you. Thank you for reading and sharing the book club. You are amazing. All members of the Area Book Club now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Meta Book Club.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
so much.
coordinating and keeping everything running smoothly.
It was a pleasure for us, for Editorial Planeta. It was great to take part in this. So thank you all. It was a great book club. It was great to be listening to you all the time. Thank you, Anne. Again, it was a pleasure to see you again.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Thanks, Michelle, too.
Thanks, Torrent Històrica. Thanks, Santiago.
Thank you.
Okay, so I close now and see you someday, Annie.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sunny day.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.